Welcome back, everybody, to Chaldean News TV. I'm here with Chris Salem, the chairman of Nineveh Rising, and Ranna Salem, the president of Nineveh Rising, both of whom did tremendous work to organize this event, the Bet Nahrain Art Show, at the Chaldean Community Foundation. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about what it was like to organize this event and put it on. It's been really successful so far.
So originally when the tragedy in Bakhdeda happened, we canceled the event out of respect for them, out of respect for the victims. And eventually we ended up doing a big U-turn on it because we figured instead of canceling it, we could dedicate the whole thing to them. And so a lot of these artists ended up creating a lot of work that was dedicated specifically to them. So you'll see a lot of unique things that they made specifically for the victims of Bakhdeda. And they've donated a lot of these pieces so that we could help raise funds for them. So it's been a pretty successful event so far. Last time I checked the count, we had over 500 people show up. So definitely attendance has been great over the last couple of days. Last year we also had a very successful event as well, but this year has been exciting as well.
And basically I would say the hardest part was in the last, we planned the event in less than a month, and a lot of people were hustling to make it happen. Chris was calling all of the sponsors, and some amazing people from our community came through for us last minute so that it could be possible. CCF was very generous again to just offer the entire space and the beverages and volunteers, and we had all the Nineveh Rising volunteers come. So, and then the artists obviously, and the whole committee, everybody's just been pushing through these last few weeks to try to make this event possible. And from what we've been hearing so far from everybody here is they're very appreciative that they have this opportunity to see the most talented artists in our community all in one space.
Now, Chris, you happened to be there in Iraq when the wedding fire happened. Can you give a first-hand account of what you saw?
Tragic. In one word, to sum it up, it was definitely tragic and overwhelming. But I want to say that our group was so incredible because originally when we started this trip and we went to Iraq, it was based off of tourism. People were there to see things, and they saw a lot of things, and they had a blast. It was incredible. We also helped a lot of people along the way, but we were primarily there so that people could connect with their roots. When we heard about the tragedy happening in Bakhdeda, as it was unfolding live, immediately every single member of our group turned from tourist into activist, and they rolled up their sleeves and they got things done. A bunch of people took initiative, and we went from pharmacy to pharmacy, and they wanted to essentially get as much burn cream as possible to help relieve some of these people of the pain that they're experiencing. So we have so many talented people in our group. We have Joe Abbo, Alex Karana, St. Elias, Michael Karana. I could go through the entire list, but all of them were amazing. The Yeldu family, everybody. And the Kestos as well. I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. But yeah, it was an incredible group of people that just basically transformed from tourists into activists overnight. And so we did that on the night of the tragedy, and then the next morning we ended up going to the actual funeral. Before we went to the funeral, we were at the site of the hall that got burned down, and that was tragic in and of itself. Even the aftermath was difficult to deal with. And the reason why I say that specifically is because I'll give you one example. I saw one guy who went into the building. And a building like that, it's not a building that you're supposed to enter because it's at risk of collapsing. So I was kind of wondering why that was happening. And I kind of followed him, obviously not inside, but just watched him from the outside. And over time, kind of picked up what was going on. And basically what was happening was that he was grieving. And he was grieving because he was trying to find his mother in there. His deceased mother, her body. and he wasn't able to find it. So some other guy ran in there after him and pulled him out. And then there was somebody from the NPU as well that told him, "Hey, listen, please, don't enter that building. It's at risk of collapsing."
He said all the bodies have been cleared out.
He said all the bodies have been cleared out. Please, just get out of the building as quickly as possible. So that one experience right there just really resonated with us in a very sad way, and we really felt like we had to do something. Seeing the funerals was another thing too, and I'll let Ranna speak on that.
Yeah. Another thing about the people that were still searching for their family members' bodies. So again, this is the day after the fire that we were there, and there were many bodies that were still not identified yet. Their DNA was submitted to a lab to figure out who they were. So some of these people, their family was actually not identified yet. So that's why they were like frantically searching. And that day, in addition to the funeral, we also went to the hospital in Erbil. And the patients had all been transferred. All the patients with serious burns were transferred outside of Bakhdeda to the Erbil hospital, the Dokhuk hospitals, Kirkuk, Mosul, and they were transferred to the public and the private hospitals. Private hospitals were expensive. These people needed money every day to stay there. Public hospitals, obviously they're free, they just needed certain medications. So this was a whole other thing. And then the funeral was the most devastating funeral that we've probably, any of us had ever seen in our whole lives. There was 47 burials the day after the fire. So we went there before the Mass. And you know how before the Mass they bring in the bodies? So it was coming in like one after another, after another, after another, 47. Each casket that came in was surrounded with loved ones. And the entire time during the Mass and before the Mass and after the Mass, they were still bringing them in. And there was so many people, I don't even know how to estimate from looking, but they never stopped coming. A very wide road of a crowd endlessly entering the funeral from the entire town, from surrounding neighboring towns, strangers. It was the largest funeral we'd ever seen, the most traumatic. It was very, very devastating. Our group left after the Mass. I don't think anyone was able to handle staying for the burials, honestly. And then after that, we returned home, and we thought about what we could do next.
So that's what this Bet Nahrain Art Show is benefiting, is this tragedy, which impacted our community all over the world. Now, I wanted to ask you, both of you, why is it important to showcase Chaldean, Assyrian, and Syriac artwork, and especially have us all under one roof and showcase that to the people?
I'll start. So, aside from the tragedy, even though that's a very good example, art is not typically destroyed. It's something that's preserved over long periods of time. And this is an expression from our community of how they feel through everything that our community is going through, from life in the homeland to life in the diaspora to our tragedies. Everything our communities are going through, personal tragedies, home life, they're expressing all of that in their very talented gifts, God-given gifts, where they can, just create these masterpieces that we can admire and look at and understand and connect with and relate to. And this is something that's going to stay with our community for forever, hopefully. If these artworks are properly, protected and preserved and cherished, they're going to end up in big museums. These are definitely the most talented artists in our community. These artists are, commissioning work for our community members in restaurants and homes and the CCF. So these artists are creating permanent expressions of the lives that we're living. And that's why it's so important for us to not only appreciate it, to witness it, to give them support for preserving our traditions like this for all of us. Yeah.
I would say the most important thing about art is identity. Art is who we are. Art is history. And what I mean by that specifically is that we wouldn't know 75 or maybe even 90% of where we came from if it wasn't for art. If it wasn't for all the ancient lamissus that are still existing in Iraq today. If it wasn't for all of the kings that are carved into the sides of mountains. There's a lot of things that we wouldn't know about who we are if it wasn't for art. So that's why I think it's extremely important. And these people that are here today, they're carrying on that same legacy. So that's why we really believe art is important. It's just central to identity.
In your guys' mind, what is unique about Chaldean, Assyrian, and Syriac art?
I would say one of the most unique things that somebody outside of our community might experience is unfortunately, the devastation that we've been through. Our community has been through over 40 genocides and massacres. We've been through massive migrations, usually due to negative reasons. And we also have a lot to celebrate. We have an ancient, rich, magnificent culture that a lot of people don't know about. So for somebody outside of our community to come see what's unique about us, I would say our ancient culture and all that we've been through is definitely very unique.
The unique thing about our art is that there's a literal connection between today and almost 7,000 years ago. I think that's the most unique thing about it. It literally encompasses our entire history. And when you look into it, you're not just looking at something that's foreign to you, especially if you're from our community. You're looking at people that were literally your ancestors and how they were and what they did and what they've accomplished, and some of the things that were important to them. So that's what makes our art unique. It's huge in terms of time. The time span is just, there's so much depth to it. So
one more thing that I just thought of also is there is a very profound expression of faith from our community, because the way that our churches have survived was through violence. Like a lot of times the churches will say the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. The way that we are here and existing today, the reason we still speak the language is because our ancestors decided to keep our faith no matter what, at risk of our lives. We were threatened. You either die or you convert to some pagan religion or whatever. And our ancestors said, we're going to keep this. And so there's this really, really intense, deep connection to our faith. And you're going to see that come out through these paintings and sculptures as well.
Thanks, Chris and Ranna Salem, for stopping by here for the interview. And a huge thanks to putting this event on to benefit the victims of the tragic wedding fire. Can you guys tell the audience where they might be able to donate to the victims?
Yeah, so you can just go to ninevehrising.org/donate. It's NINEVERISING.org/donate. There's multiple options, PayPal, Venmo. We have a new thing called Zephy, which is completely free. They don't take any funds out of the donations, so that's a very useful tool. So that's where you can go to donate. Thank you, Cal.
Thanks, guys, for all the work you've done here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.